Well, well, well. Transformers Siege Deluxe Wave 2. It's about bloody time you showed up to the party, man. And we're going to start things off this time by taking a look at Prowl in the latest GotBot True review. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, Dennis Moulton, aka GotBot. As always, please like, comment, share, and of course, subscribe. Check out Machinery of Man, The Everything Factor, Transformers Collectors, NL, and me everywhere. And this is Siege Prowl. And I feel like we might be the last place on the planet Earth to finally get these guys at retail. It's a bit ridiculous how late they're coming, but better late than never, right? Is this guy the best? Is he the worst? Or is he middle of the road for the wave? Well, we're about to find out. In fact, I don't want to ruin anything. We're going to see if he's guilty or innocent of the price increase and just how good he scores across the board when we head over to the table and take a closer look at this guy. And so here we are, finally, at long last, with the Transformers Siege Wave 2 Deluxes, and we're going to start things off here with Prowl. Now, I got to kind of put in context here a couple of things. One, this is being recorded on May the 11th. These guys only showed up on shelves, on local retail shelves, 2 days ago in my neck of the woods on May the 9th. I feel like we're the last place in the world to be getting these guys. I feel like the distribution is literally several months behind everywhere, absolutely everywhere else. And for most people, these guys are now old news. Not around here though, and they are obviously going to be new to me, and maybe they're new to you as well. The second piece of contextual information that I need to give. Usually when we do the scores for figures that we look at the posability, the playability, and the transformation, and we give kind of an overall mark. But with the Siege line, I have also been adding another dimension, guilty or innocent, when it comes to the recent price increases that this line has undergone. And to my shock, Wave 1 was more innocent than I expected it to be. Now, this does not apply to the Battle Masters. They hold the same position as Titan Masters and Prime Masters and have no price increase. It does not apply to the Micromaster 2-packs because they are the exact same price as what Legend scale figures were. So I kind of see that as comparable. We had an increase in Deluxes, in Voyagers, and in Leaders. For Deluxes, that increase is about 30% or so, going from $19.99 to $29.99. The Deluxes in Wave 1. One was clearly innocent, two were barely innocent, and one I said was guilty. In other words, it's a good figure, it's a great figure, but it's not worth an extra 10 bucks. That was Sideswipe. When you compare him to the classic Sideswipe, the classic Sideswipe, in terms of amount of plastic used and posability, playability, pretty much offers you more. Limited shoulders, I'll give you that. When you compare the Siege to the Fall of Cybertron one, yeah, okay, I do admit there that the Siege is better. But on the whole, the Siege is smaller, and there are certain things that I am kind of concerned about. So he was guilty. But if you don't mind the things that I noted, or if you don't have another version of Sideswipe, or you just dig the Cybertronian look, then I can certainly see the argument for getting him. Nevertheless, trying to be as objective as possible, he is the only one from the Deluxes that came in as guilty. The two Voyagers, they eked by as innocent, though I do have concern about Megatron's ankles and the longevity of those things. And while the Optimus is, bar none, the best Optimus that I've ever handled, I will say this, I'm not a huge fan of that alt mode. And of course, I did some custom work on that I looked at a little while ago. So, that finally brings us to the Leaders. And while Magnus was indeed innocent, Shockwave, as perfect as he is definitely guilty. So the score right now has two figures out of 8 being guilty. What about wave 2? Well, we're going to start off, like I said here, with Prowl. And we're going to begin by looking at his box. Now, guilty or innocent, as much as I'm trying to be objective, there is a subjective quality to it. For example, to me, this is absolutely unnecessary. This is pure wastage. If you are a mint in box type of collector, then yeah, okay, you're going to say, this adds value for display, and I understand that it costs a couple of bucks more. I look at it and say, you know what? You could have thrown it on a card back and it costs less and you could have saved a couple of dollars. I don't need this. It's only going to go in the garbage anyway. Well, in the recycling, to be honest with you. But nevertheless, it's a fine box. I guess it's not quite rectangular. It's a weird shape, though we do have beautiful art over here of Prowl. And on the back, the product shots. And over here we have the kind of generic Siege artwork. It's a box. However, he comes with absolutely splendid instructions. I love these, they're fantastic. Now, in lieu of the ever popular collector card, this time we have stats for the accessories. In this case, for his blaster with and without the light bar attached, and we'll see that shortly. With the light bar attached, it is an acid pellet strike blaster in its axe form, and it is, I guess, moderately strong, as strong as Prowl can swing it. It is highly accurate, and I don't know what the lock is supposed to represent. Now, a lot of people have complained and said, but he can't hold it as an axe. You're right. He can't hold it as an axe, but if you look at the picture there, he's not holding it as an axe. He's still holding it as a blaster. It's just, I don't know, I guess you're supposed to strike Decepticons with the axe handle, I guess. I don't know, it's weird. Stats down bottom are for his blaster without the light bar attached. When it's not an axe and it's actually a blaster. It's not the strike part, it's the blaster part. And it is stronger. It is not quite as accurate, but still pretty good. And I guess its fire blast is pretty high. I suppose that's what it is. I guess. Though I feel like it's very hard to see, this is all white, there's nice molded in detail. You will notice a 5mm port on the top of this. Prowl also comes with this rather nice light bar. You'll notice that there's a square hole on the top, and what this really is clear plastic with red painted underneath, and it actually does look like lights. I'm holding onto a 5mm peg because you can do this with it. There's the aforementioned axe version. I'm holding onto the 5mm peg. That's what he holds in his hand. A lot of people have tried to get him to hold onto the tip of this, but he can't do it. Though you can put a blast effect up on the tip of the blaster section. I don't know. It's a weird axe. It's just a spot to put the light bar. That being said, you could also do this. Do you like that look better? You're putting a round hole into a square peg. He could still hold it in his hand, or it could go affixed in this fashion in vehicle mode. And the fashionable Cybertronian law enforcement official could hold it in this manner, or he could hold it like this. And just for the record, this is the recognized axe version. I know, it doesn't look like an axe. But what if you don't want him to have the light bar on the blaster at all? What can you do with it? Well, the guy's covered in 5mm holes, so you can always place it here as a shoulder light, or a forearm shield maybe? A weirdo shin guard, or just in the plain back of him where it belongs in vehicle mode. You could even take it and turn it up that way if you're so inclined. So in case you weren't keeping count, he has a 5mm port on his back. He has 2 on the top of his shoulders, although those shoulders can move down, and so it can be on the top of his shoulder or on the side of his shoulder. We'll see that when we do articulation. He has 2 on his forearms, he has 2 on his lower legs, and he even has 2 on his heels. So the guy's covered. You can really cog him up, or 6-gun him up, if you will. That being said, we will cog him up in a little bit, and I'll explain why we are cogging him up instead of 6-gunning him up at this point at that time. And so it seems high time that we should get around to giving some scores for this guy. First things first, the paint apps. When we compare him to the only comparison that's really needed, we can see that we have two versions of Prowl here. The Universe version and the Siege version. Conspicuous by his absence is the Combiner Wars version. I did not get that one. I felt like it was the least accurate, at least to my sense of Prowl. Those who were fans of the comics in 2015, 2016 would probably say that the Combiner Wars version is the most accurate. But any of us that know the kind of original cartoon source material would kind of be more drawn toward one of these, I think. Especially because of the iconic door wings. That being said, when I looked at the Classics Prowl way back on February 5th of 2016 in GotBot True Review number 6, which was bad. Man, was that awful. I mean, I'm pretty awful now, but I was super duper awful then. I said back then that the paint apps on the Universe was a 8. And I stick by the fact that it was an 8. I wanted to give it higher, but the truth of the matter is the word police and kind of what's on his doors isn't accurate. They should pretty much just be black with a little like police star on it. And the sort of plastic that was used for his door wings, it really didn't allow the white to cure properly, and so it's prone to smudging. That's unfortunate. So it's no mistaking that the Classics Universe version is Prowl, but it's definitely not perfect. The Combiner Wars one, for the record, would have been about a 9 because it was a really nice mix of white and black. That being said, it too drops a little bit down to an 8 because it doesn't have the door wings and therefore seems less accurate. What about the new Siege one? Well, the new Siege one has brilliant white that I think is going to last. I think if you want a bright white that's going to last, Siege is the way to go. It mixes it nicely with the black. Unfortunately, there's too much black. Going too far up his forearm into his bicep, and his thighs should not be black. So we do have some issues there. That being said, when we look at all three chug iterations of Prowl, I'm going to say that whether you choose the Universe or the Combiner Wars or the Siege, they're all going to be about an 8. So with 8s across the board for paint applications, I can say this, that of all the offerings for a chug collection that we have, I think that this guy at least has the white pop the most. Now, what about the articulation? Well, I said a long time ago that the Universe Prowl had a 10 for his articulation. And I still stand by that. It's still a 10. I would say the Combiner Wars one, because it does lack kind of proper feet at all, and because it lacks wrist articulation, it's probably more like a 9. What about the Siege here? It's pretty good. Pretty great, actually, but there's still things about it that kind of get to me. One thing in particular, and we'll get to it in the end. But for now, his articulation breaks down like this. We have a head that can go left and right. It can look up and down a little bit, which is fine. The door wings can open and close, though they cannot angle up or down. I think that's unfortunate. The shoulders can go all the way around, and they can go out and come back down. But when they come down, a lot of times you get this one to come with it, so it can stay up or it can go down. There is a 5mm hole here that I mentioned earlier. I said it could be on the top of the shoulder or the side of the shoulder. That's up to you. I prefer them up, but whatever. He does have a bicep swivel. He does have a 90-degree elbow and a nice wrist. We do have the ability for him to do full splits, and you know what? I said when I looked at the Universe Prowl that, you know what, he could do the splits for Daisy, would be a fantastic dancer. This guy, same thing. As is the Combiner Wars one, he can do the splits fantastic as well. Excellent leg articulation on all of them. Can do the splits out to the side. All three of them can do that as well. Fantastic. Thigh swivel on the guy. Built kind of into a mushroom peg that goes into the thigh, so I like that because you don't see the cut for the thigh swivel. We have a nice deep knee bend, we have heels that can move, and we do have pretty deep ankle tilt on the guy. Here is the thing. You see all of that, and it's extremely comparable to the Classics. If the Classics was a 10, this guy should be a 10 as well. But we do have one problem. So as tremendous as the articulation is on the Siege figure, we do have one problem. And here's that problem. When I pick up this guy, who is now about 12, 13 years old, and I do the shake test, nothing moves. All that you're hearing is one tire moving. That's it. However, when I shake this guy, those lower legs are pretty wibbly wobbly loose at the hips. Just saying. So because of that wobbliness, I have to say that the articulation on the Siege Prowl is a 9. It is more comparable to the articulation of the Combiner Wars than it is to the Classics. I think the Classics is still the most solid. So, for all three Chug versions of Prowl, we have 8s across the board for paint apps. We have a 10 on the Universe one for articulation. We have a 9 and a 9 for the Combiner Wars one and the Siege one. So he's still scoring good, an 8 and a 9. He's overall at 8.5 for the Siege Prowl. Not bad. What about the conversion? Well, the conversion is where this guy is going to shine. But before we get to the conversion, let's see this dude all cogged up. And here once again is where we see the versatility of the Siege line in full force. I mean, you know, what other line can you do this with? Seriously. I will note, and I didn't mention it earlier, but the mix of white plastic and white paint on this guy is a really close match. Like, especially on the lower legs. His feet are white plastic. His heels are white plastic. But the white that you see kind of on his shins and on the side of his leg here is white paint put onto translucent plastic. When I said that his paint was also an 8, I also neglected to mention that I don't really like the clear tires. I wish the tires were black. But still, it's strong, it's Prowl, it's no mistaking it. And in terms of posability, playability, you cannot deny the ability to kind of add all of these parts to him. He is not 6-gunned up yet because we haven't looked at 6-gun on the channel. We will, and we will see this guy decked out with him then. So while I think that in terms of paint apps, they all have their strengths and weaknesses and all score about an 8, and while I think that articulation-wise, the Classics is just a little bit better than either the Combiner Wars or even the new Siege one, now we're going to look at the transformation. And if you include the fact that he can get loaded out and armed up with all that armor and extra bits of another character like Cog as part of the transformation, well then this guy beats the other two kind of hands down because he's covered in the 5mm ports. That being said, this is the opportunity for him to kind of obliterate the competition because there is a certain elegance and beauty to this guy's conversion that is undeniable. The transformation for the Combiner Wars one is pretty good. It's about an 8. It's all right. Nothing special, but it's effective. However, conversion for the Universe one is terrible. It's about a 4. The door wings like to pop off. It's great for collectors. Kids never were going to like it because of that feature. You'd lose the sides of the car. This guy may be a perfect version for kids, or possibly the Cyberverse one might also be a great one for kids. Here's the thing. Even before doing the conversion, I can say this and say it safely, that if you have no version of Prowl, like you're new to collecting, I wouldn't go back and try and hunt down the Combiner Wars version or even the Universe version. I would be quite happy with this guy. However, if you have an earlier version that you're happy with, I don't know if you really need to upgrade to this guy. That's up to you and your personal taste. But let's look at that conversion. It's pretty good. We can close in his heels and kind of straighten out his toes. And that's sort of the back end of the vehicle done, kind of. We straighten up the head and we kind of lift off the body. And we will sort of start to lift that up over his head. And when we lift this up over his head, we're going to lift it all the way back, and there's a white panel in here. The whole thing is attached to an armature in here, and there's a white panel, and that white panel was in behind his head. And that white panel comes back and forms the rest of the hood. And now this is straightened up. Bring that back. Please pardon the little cut there, but I got interrupted by the phone. This is where we left off. We have all of this kind of straightened up in behind. We come to the front here, and actually before we put that down, we should fold up the little black piece that was part of his tummy, we'll say. Then we can bring this down. Then we can come to the lower part of the body, turn them at the waist, and you should now be able to collapse the legs and have them kind of, well, we'll even take the light bar off there, have them kind of fit up here next to this 5mm area and peg into each other so that all of this fits together nice and snug and securely. Like that. And we can even take our light bar and put it back up there on the top. Straighten it up a little bit. It's like I said, it's an elegant conversion so far. The arms, we can straighten them down, and the way that the arms work is basically you put it out to the side like this, you turn the whole thing like this, and you flip it in. Same over here, you bring the arm out, you turn it, you bring it down and flip it in. The arms, much like with the Classics Universe one, are now down underneath. We will bring them up under the vehicle. I find, for me, I like to leave the shoulder sections up like that. And finally, last but not least, we're going to close the doors. They should peg in. You may have to, as you can see here, sort of finagle things just a little bit to fit them in on that side, and same over there, and then boom, in the end, and you can see what that's like underneath. You could turn his head around too, by the way. I didn't do it, but you could certainly do that and hide his face. But in the end, basically, here we have Prowl in his vehicle mode. Unfortunately, I feel like the new Siege Prowl suffers the most in this mode. I don't like it at all. I don't dig it. I get it. It's supposed to be Cybertronian. I just don't think it works. The only place that you can store his blaster is way up here on the light bar. There's absolutely nowhere else that I can see to put it. He does roll fine, but I really feel like that the tires, instead of being clear, because we have silver like rims, hubcaps, whatever you want to call them, I feel like the tires themselves should have been black. I don't know. It's not for me. When I think of Prowl, I guess I just think of a police car that I recognize. And I feel like that this is more accurate to the G1 iteration, talking about the Universe version here, is more accurate to the G1 iteration of Prowl than the Siege or the Combiner Wars. Though the Combiner Wars is a cool looking police car in its own right. I get it. They're two different aesthetics. Before anybody ever comments and says, hey, well, one is an Earth mode and one is a Cybertronian mode. I get it. I understand that. And if the Cybertronian mode works for you, cool. It doesn't change his scores. I said that the scores for Siege Prowl were an 8 for paint apps. I stand by it. I said that the articulation was a 9. I stand by it because he does have wobbly hips and his shoulders are a little bit, you know, a little bit wonky. I'm just saying. And by wonky, I mean you can like twist that whole kind of shoulder piece up or down. Maybe some would say, hey, no, that's actually an additional piece of articulation. It's up to you. It's just when I have his arm out straight and I put it down, I'd like for a shoulder to stay where it belongs. The conversion for this guy, honestly, it's 10. The conversion is elegant, it's simple, it's beautiful, I love it. It's a 10. Overall score for the Classics Universe version was about a 7. Overall score for the Combiner Wars one would probably be about an 8. It's pretty average, it's pretty good, but it's also the most stylized. Overall score for the Siege, he was getting an 8.5, a 10 for his transformation. Honestly, he's an easy 9.25. by rights, he is, across the board, the best Prowl that we've gotten. Not perfect because of loose hips, because of kind of stylized paint applications, but he is extremely strong. Now, is he guilty or innocent, as good as he is? I will note that this guy weighs in at 72 grams compared to this guy weighing in at 91 grams. 19 less grams, $10 more. I totally see why people would choose this guy, but he is not going to replace my Universe Prowl. For me, I have to say he's guilty. I don't think he's worth another $10. I really don't. Not for me. Maybe for you. Like I said, this is kind of subjective. But I don't like the looseness of the hips. I don't like that there's more black than there should be. I don't like that he weighs significantly less and is significantly shorter, although some would argue that that is more correct in terms of scale. I don't know. I honestly didn't think he was that much smaller than the other Autobots. Maybe he was. I just don't remember it that way. I don't like the fact that we got these unnecessary boxes. I don't like the fact that there's nowhere nice and neat to really store his blaster, and I'm not a fan of the Cybertronian alt mode. All of that being said, I also gave him a score of a 9.25 because objectively, as a version of Prowl and as a Transformers toy, he is fantastic. And while he's not going to replace my Prowl, I am very confident that I will have a version of this mold in my collection. Probably as Barricade, but we shall see as time goes on. This guy was a bit of a challenge because while I think he's tremendous, I also don't think he's worth the price increase. And here we are once again, and I know what you're thinking, GotBot, what you just said makes no sense. How is it that you can score this guy so high, but at the same time say that he's guilty of the price increase? Don't they go hand in hand? No, they really don't go hand in hand. Here's the thing. This guy is good. I mean, his color is undoubtedly Prowl. His articulation is great, although it does drive me a little bonkers that these shoulder pieces like to move and that his hips are pretty loose, at least on my copy. Now, I mean, he's not going to, like, just fall over or anything, but they're looser than I'd like for them to be. And probably part of that has to do with the fact that this guy is so small and slight and slender. The ratio of his thigh to his shin, like, his shin and his foot seems huge to me. It really puts me more in the mind of animated Prowl. Maybe it's a deliberate nod to that. Maybe it's not. I don't know. There are, like, too many little niggling aspects like that that bother me for me to say he's worth an extra $10. Maybe they don't bother you, and that's why I said there's a certain subjective nature to it. Objectively speaking, it is a solid figure, and if you choose this as your representation of Prowl, and you like it, and you like the Cybertronian writing, and you like the Cybertronian alt mode, and you love that he has all this black, although I'll say this, though I didn't mention it in the review, I do really like the yellow on him. Like, there's a lot here to like, and I could see the argument for it. Like, it's the sort of thing where you could say all of the good aspects about this guy, and I'm probably just going to agree with you and say, yeah, you know what, he is great. Maybe this is a case where Prowl is just lucky. I mean, the Combiner Wars mold that they used for Prowl, while I missed the door wings on that, it's a good mold, it's a fine mold, beautiful head sculpt, it's a good Prowl. If you are opting, like me, to keep the Universe Prowl, no problem there. That was always a good Prowl, good mold, although some people don't like it. And then we have this guy. While he's not going to replace my Prowl, I do like the mold enough that when it gets reused as Barricade, I can see myself getting that and kind of possibly keeping it then as my Barricade. Anyway, let me know what you think about this guy. I don't think I've been harsh on him because he's scored really well. Let me know if he's going to, replace your Universe Prowl, or if you are of the mindset that, no, you know what? I'm keeping my Universe and I'm keeping this guy because I have two separate collections. I don't have the space for that. I can only afford the room for one representation of a character. And for me, that's why I'm keeping the Universe. If space wasn't an issue, I'd probably keep both, but it is. Anyway, let me know what you think about this guy. Let me know what you think about the other two Prowls. You know I love to hear from you guys. As always, I'm going to say again, please hit that subscribe button. It helps me out so very much, and I very much look forward to the next time that you and I get together to have another visit right here inside the videos.